G'day friends and foes, Arjay here with Arjay's This Is Not Legal Advice, or TINLA for short. So in this video I'm going to be talking about the World Freedom Day or Freedom Day on the 5th of September. I'm just here at some street furniture in Surfers Paradise where police claimed when they were unlawfully stalking me, had their own unlawful assembly, etc., that they were, I'll just flip this camera around, they claimed that they were looking for stolen cars under this street furniture. So when we were walking, myself and two others, for a peaceful assembly, then we were being tailed by the police, and they falsely claimed that they were looking for stolen cars, that they were doing an operation in an attempt to try and get me for obstruction of justice or obstruction. So basically the male officer, many of you would have seen the episode, it was one of the TINLA episodes, and basically the police officer then pulled out his iPad type thing, it might not be an Apple, but then claimed that he was looking for stolen cars, doing an operation, and then asked for my name or demanded my name. Then I pointed out, hey, look, under what sections or what reasonable suspicion do you have under sections 40 and 41 or something like that of the Police Powers and Responsibilities Act. So in Queensland, the police only have a right to ask for your details if they are reasonably reasonably suspect that you are committing an offence, or that you are a witness to an offence, that kind of thing, or that an offence has been committed in the area, and just say they've got to do a road blockade and search everyone's cars for who's got the bag of stolen money or whatever from the bank. So hey Earl and Stephen. So we got hi RJ from Earl and Gangsters in Blue from Stephen. Yeah, it reminds me hopefully most police are good people. Sorry about that, I'll put her on Do Not Disturb if I can when I'm doing this filming. People trying to call me. Yeah, so it reminds me of the joke that they've got a little boy, and he asks his dad, or the dad asks, hey, what do you want to do when you grow up? And the probably just buggered that joke up, so I'll save that joke for another day. But anyway, so the police were claiming that they were hiding under that furniture, etc., and at the bike rack just behind me to look for stolen cars. So what I'm going to do today, and I did coin the hashtag World Freedom Day as far as I am aware, back in April, on the 6th of April, so sorry I'm losing my voice, but I did my first protest video, which was in a park on the 7th of April, but the day before I did basically the same video, but it wasn't actually protesting, it was suggesting people protest. And after that, maybe a week or two later, they had the big protests in Michigan and in Berlin. I did point out that, under these COVID directions, you can do, activities such as exercise. So why not exercise and protest? And then say, 2 or 3 weeks later, Victor Tay started exercising my rights, etc. So Stephen says, so far, any reason, the grubs, okay. Anthony, how am I going? I'm fine, besides my hair's a bit messy, but it always is. I'm trying to grow it longer and it'll weigh itself down. Anyway, so as many of you know, that there is a planned protest on the 5th of September in every state capital, capital building, parliament, whatever you want to call it. There are some issues with people trying to change, say, the Sydney protest to be in ANZ Stadium, and I advertised that I'm doing a protest in Surfers Paradise, which is why I'm here now. If you can see, it's not many people, despite it being a Sunday, because of COVID, obviously. Otherwise, it would be packed here, and they would have markets and all this other interesting stuff. But basically, I also put that I was going to do a protest on the same day, as well as it's launching my Reset Parliament political party as well, and it's protesting an unlawful lockdown and whatever. So I put that I was going to do that in Surfers Paradise, and then someone has put a post that there's a Gold Coast protest at Dreamworld, which is just stupid, really. If you're going to a paid location to protest, even though it's a public space, but it is still one with exclusions in terms of you have to pay for entry into Dreamworld, then I think people will get booted out, lose their $100 or whatever it is per ticket. I think they might have half price until September or whatever, but you get the point. Lose your season ticket, etc., because it's a withdrawal of a license. You're not going there for the legitimate purpose of going on rides or whatever. You're going there to protest. So I do think the ANZ Stadium idea is really stupid. And you got Hyde Park, you've got the Domain that has within the Domain there's Speaker's Corner, etc. So just show the view. Also, like I said, I think that Dreamworld's a really stupid place, but make your own protests if you want, or just go wherever. Also, Dave Oneggs had a great idea where he made a meeting, protest, gathering, whatever, a couple of weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago now, that I was at. You can also watch the video from there on my Arjay Martins for Australians page. But Dave had the great idea, hey, besides Cascade Gardens was the main one because that's where he was going to, but hey, why not go to your local war memorial? So if you live in the middle of Muswellbrook, or you live in Ipswich or something like that, and if it's too far to get to where Parliament is, then why not try there? So anyway, I'll show you what I've done. Just reverse the camera again. This is where the meter maids used to hang out a long time ago, before COVID. So I better not show my address maybe. But anyway, so I have these peaceful assembly notices. I've got multiple ones. The reason why I've got multiple ones is in case the magistrate, if it gets opposed by the police, decides that there's some kind of technicality, even if he invents a technicality or she invents a technicality. So basically, on this form, it's two-sided sheet of paper, but I have multiple ones. You put your name of your organisation, so Reset Parliament, name of organiser, myself, Arjay Martin, address, phone number, email address, that kind of thing. Also the assembly details. So I'm having them on Saturdays. For some of these, I have only for the 5th, and I've got different details. So for one example, I have for the 5th of September with 31 participants, which is one more person than the current COVID directions for the Gold Coast. So, if they're going to allow 30 people, why not allow 31? In Brisbane at the moment, they're a super restricted area. They can only have mass gatherings of 10 people. And this is without getting COVID exemptions. I'll put in for COVID exemptions as well. And then I've got another version where I have 100 people, which is what the restrictions were a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. So for the purpose of assembly, I have protesting the illegal lockdown, COVID directions / restrictions, abusive office by police. I'm sure the police will love that when I hand this to them in a moment. Federal and state political rally, and free for freedom and human rights. They're all legitimate purposes to, protest, and we should protect our rights. So, about to go down Cavill Avenue. Got some ladies singing. There's a Surfers Paradise sign. Woo! So I'm going to go hand these into the police station. So when you're filling these forms, you basically can send it to the police commissioner. So if you're, say, in Brisbane near the QPS headquarters in Roma Street, you can plonk it in there, or give it to the local police station in the covering the area in which you're going to have a lawful assembly, which is another word for peaceful protest. And of course, with these protests, they will be peaceful. I'm not speaking on behalf of other people organising their own protests in different areas. Just show you down Cavill Avenue. So this is like the main strip of the Gold Coast, or at least it used to be when, you know, COVID didn't exist, or COVID wasn't abused, whichever way you want to look at it. So I guess Surfers Paradise, for those in Sydney, if you haven't been here or haven't heard about it, which I'm sure you probably have anyway, but it's a bit like King's Cross in a way, besides prostitution's illegal in Queensland, so that's one little difference. But anyway, so yeah, I can just reading some comments. You don't help him, Victorians. What do you mean, Fernando, that I'm not helping people in Victoria? So with the protests that are Australia-wide, my particular one's just in Surfers Paradise though, then it is showing support for people in Victoria as well. And then Lisa's from Moscow, I mean Melbourne, the capital of the USSR. Again, I mean the United Soviet Socialist Republic of Victoria, or Victoriastan. Someone keeps calling me, which is a bit annoying. If I go to answer the call, or if I even go to message them, I've found out at the last protest I was at that it cuts out the video, which isn't very helpful. But anyway, so I'm going to be going into the police station, and you know, maybe they might pop a cap in my ass, so to speak. Who knows? I'll just drop it off. You don't have to wait for them to approve it, although that would be kind of funny if they do go nuts at me. But you know, I'd rather just put in for my protest. They can either let it go, and if 5 days have passed, working days, then I've got the authorised protest. And if they don't, or also I should point out, some of these versions have different dates, so not just the 5th of September, a couple have multiple dates including the 5th of September, but extending all the way to April, because you know, I just want to put in one form and not have to put in 50 million forms. And got some people at the nightclub, but the nightclub's actually supposed to be closed. It's just like sit down restaurants now or something like that, is my understanding. But anyway, so when you put these forms in, if 5 working days have elapsed, then, and the police haven't taken you to court basically, then you know, you've got authorised protest. So then you can advertise it as such, of course, and you can, in anticipation of receiving such, you know, authorisation, which is what I'm going to do, I'll just do another short video inviting people. But my particular protest will be from 11 AM until 1 PM. If people want to go earlier, then that's fine as well. So they do have... So that was a bit of excitement. So there is a protest in Brisbane afterwards, and I think that starts at midday. But you know, people can go to mine, or I think it starts at 1 PM. Someone can correct me. But people can go to my protest in Surfers Paradise if they wish to, and then of course I'll only have, you know, 31 people or whatever, or whoever turns up. But you know, yeah, so you can go to my protest and then to another one afterwards. There's a police station there. Hopefully it's open. Well, I assume it will be. It's probably the major police station, even though it's physically small, in the area. Ooh, are they open? Anyway, so I'll turn the camera around and give it a crack. Let's see what happens. G'day there. I've got some Peaceful Assembly Act notices to drop off here. It should be filled in correctly. I'm not having a procession, so that's why it's got a big blank section. So is that fine?
Yeah, mate, I can't approve it. It obviously gets passed on to the officer in charge.
Yep, no worries.
Give me 2 seconds. What are they in relation to, mate?
So protesting an illegal lockdown against police abuse of power and for a political rally for a political party.
Righto.
Thank you.
There obviously, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, so I have different versions in case, you know, maybe the police object to one where it says, you know, if I have 100 people, but they might not reject one that says 31 people, as an example.
Okay. So the only thing different,
Yeah, so some have multiple dates as well, and some have different dates too, because otherwise I have to keep coming back here and you know, printing them out. And
when do you intend to have them, mate?
So the first date is the 5th of September.
The 5th, yeah, which is next Saturday.
That's right.
Righto.
And then you got 5 business days before
10th
that.
of the 10th, 7th, 11th, and the 12th of the 12th.
Yeah.
The 3rd of the 4th, 2021. You're prepared, my friend.
Yep.
Mate, just to clarify, on here you've wrote down, on one of them it's got the place being, so these first 2 don't have the place, neither does the 4th or the 5th.
Yeah, okay, so
The 3rd one says Surfers Paradise, brackets Esplanade / park near Cavill Avenue. Which park are you referring to?
like just basically the strip, you know, where you can sit down and just have a meal or whatever.
Right, so you mean the Esplanade as opposed to a park?
Yeah, okay, well I can correct that. So if you hand them back, I'll just...
It does say the Esplanade, mate. That's...
Yep, no worries.
You might, when it gets passed on to the IC, they may want to clarify some information.
No worries, and I'll just quickly write Esplanade on other ones too, so... Thank you.
Hi, how are you? Can you please send an officer just outside House of Brews? I already have a complaint that I walked out of a bill, and he's now outside my venue arguing with me.
So I'll just go out here so I'm not disturbing the lady reporting whatever she's trying to report, something about some bad dude at a venue. So I didn't actually fill this out myself besides the signature obviously, but there was something missed. So where's it say location? Esplanade Surfers Paradise. So sorry about that, just gotta fix these up. And then I can come back out and see what people have written or have to say or whatever. The Esplanade Surfers Paradise. The Esplanade Surfers Paradise. So just fix those things up and then I'm back. There we go, sir. Thank you very much. Cheerio. So anyway, now I can start looking at comments, etc. Just a second. Just walk over here somewhere. So we've got Kathy, good on you mate, from New South Wales. Where do you get the forms from and what are they called? So New South Wales is a bit different than Queensland, but in Queensland it's under the Peaceful Assembly Act, and the forms, you just type like Peaceful Assembly Act, QPS. QPS is short for Queensland Police Service, and then it comes up. So the forms don't actually fully comply with the legislation. The legislation itself, being a Peaceful Assembly Act, says you have to include X, Y, Z, but the forms have additional parts written on there, which is probably unlawful, including that it must be in handwriting, obviously to slow up how many forms people put in, and also has extra parts on it like do you have any vulnerable people going there, like children or disabled people or whatever. For New South Wales, just from the top of my head, you don't actually need and you don't need an authorised protest in Queensland either, but you know, the police do appreciate in a normal non-COVID times that you inform them of your protest, because that way they can plan. So, you know, if you didn't have COVID times and you had 500 people turn up, then that's a bit different than if you've got 10 people, because, you know, you might have people crossing a street when the lights turn red or something like that, so the police can plan and just block the street off, or, you know, stick their hand up like stop and get people safely across the road. And the Francois Drolet, Tina Francois Drolet, sorry about that, it's you've got white font and had white background, like when my face was shining. Thank you, Tina. So she says, good on you mate, hi from Sydney. Is anyone else going to any of the protests anywhere else around Australia? Watrong Bello. Hi Angela as well, and Ernesto and Barbara. Yeah, TikTok. Obviously, you know, how I was holding the camera, the officer knew I was filming. I did check quickly that you can, you know, there's no prohibitions on filming in the foyer of a police station, because there are some places like courts, obviously you can't film anywhere within a court building unless you have permission of the court. But, you know, I did a check and it was a reasonable check, so if it turns out the law is not like that, and I looked up lawyers' websites, then, you know, I don't get in trouble anyway, because I have the honest and reasonable but mistaken belief that you can film in there, and I believe you can, but, you know, just in case. So, as I said, I'm going to have my protest on the 5th of September, the first one. As it was said by the officer, there were multiple protest dates on some of the forms, and sorry again about my hair, but it's just springy. What am I supposed to do? Anyway, so 11 a.m. until 1 p.m. At Surfers Paradise near Cavill Avenue, near the Surfers Paradise sign, for those of you that aren't familiar with the area. And, you know, I don't know how many people turn up, but it depends if the police are going to oppose the protest. Perhaps they do, and if they do, then I get to go to court again. So, you know, it'll be interesting to see what happens. So, again, you know, this is Surfers Paradise, and the Surfers Paradise sign's up there somewhere, and we'll just sort of be between, you know, this area and the sign, I imagine. Assuming that the police don't oppose the protest, and if they do, then the magistrate can only not authorise a an authorised protest, which again, authorised protests, differences are, one, a lot more people will probably turn up because they've got the confidence of going there, and two, that people can't be charged for obstruction as long as the people are acting reasonably and reasonably in line with the notice. So it's not really asking for permission by the police, hey, can I have a protest for Queensland and for various other places as well. What it is, hey, look, I'm going to have a protest, do you have any problems with it? And then there's a required mediation if they wish to oppose it before they can take it to court. And if it's been 5 days elapsed, i.e., 5 p.m, 4 p.m, whatever on Friday, technically it's probably 4 p.m, then if it hasn't been opposed and ruled by a magistrate that you can't have an authorised protest, then it becomes an authorised protest. Hi Aaron, from Hellistan of Melbourne. Is it really that bad in Melbourne? I imagine it is, but you may as well ask people. It seems very unreasonable to me that everyone can only exercise for 1 hour a day between 5 a.m. and 8 p.m. And I don't know if people are trying to arrange it that everyone exercises within the same hour so you can have some social spirit or cohesion. But, that might be a good idea too. But another unreasonable thing is that, there's some people that need more exercise than others as well. So if you weigh 150 kilograms and you're trying to lose weight, then how dare the government try and tell you you have to remain ill? Because obviously, unless you're built like the Hulk, then if you're 150 kilograms, then you're probably not as healthy as you could be if you were 80 kilograms, depending on your height and everything else as well. So Earl hasn't even been out for a month, or for months I should say. So Earl's missing out. This is not medical advice, nor is this video legal advice. That's why it's called This Is Not Legal Advice. But I imagine that Earl's vitamin D levels might well be quite low. I suffer from vitamin D deficiency, and therefore that gives me problems with magnesium deficiency, again severe magnesium deficiency, and with calcium deficiency, because all three things are needed to work together. It's just like, hydroxychloroquine with a Z-Pack, the antibiotic, however you pronounce the name, that's why everyone just calls it a Z-Pack, and zinc. So, so Tina hopes everyone comes down to support me, and she'll share with her friends and family. And the government's trying to take away our freedoms. That's right, we don't have many freedoms to take away anymore, especially, those poor buggers that are in Melbourne, or Mitchell just above Melbourne as well. And if we don't stand up and do something about this, then, it'll happen in Brisbane, or happen in the Gold Coast, in Perth, in, regional Victoria, regional New South Wales, everywhere. So if people don't stand up, then, then basically, don't really want to say people deserve it then, but because, obviously people don't deserve it, but, there does come a time where tyrants probably think like that, like, oh, look, people won't stand up for themselves, so they're not worthy of existing. And I don't believe that, of course. But, some other people, when they go doing speeches about we need to depopulate the planet, may well think like that. So Aaron says it is as terrible as I think. Liliana says, my gosh, we need to ask the police and government to allow us to go out and protest. Do we need also to get a list of the words that can and cannot be used? Yeah, so, there is method behind my madness, and basically, I'm sure the police are probably watching now anyway, or at least one officer who unlawfully stalks me, I submit, and has made a bunch of police officers intimidate me, harass me, etc. But basically, the police have two options. They can let the protests go on, and therefore it's an authorised protest and people are protected against obstruction, and therefore, it's acquiescence, implied consent, especially on some of the versions of the forms I put. There might be 100 protesters. I've got no idea how many turn up. Last protest that I held here, 3 people turned up, and that included myself. And anyway, so obviously it's like a marketing funnel in that, maybe 10,000 people need to watch a video for you to get 100 people turn up, something like that, just as an example. But the police can either oppose it in the court, in which case then I get to go before the court, and obviously it would be opposed on COVID grounds, and if they want to try and be tricky, then obviously that's what it's going to be on. But because they oppose it on COVID grounds, then I get to argue that in Queensland the COVID directions aren't even law. Not only for the constitutionality, even though courts can judge things against the constitution, even state courts, even though a lot of the magistrates don't understand the law in terms of that, and that's no insult to them. But if you try and just say if you get I don't know, what's a better example? You get a COVID fine and you try and argue that, hey, look, under the Biosecurity Act 2015, from memory, and with section 109 of the Constitution, therefore the COVID direction does not apply because you have not received a personal public control order, blah blah blah, then even though that's real and that's real law and the magistrate should hear that, then a lot of magistrates may say, oh, this is not a constitutional court, you have to go to the High Court for that, which is incorrect. The Constitution itself, of course, states within so-called Covering Clause 5 that it applies to all courts, all judges, all people, basically, in Australia. So you also have in a Section 78B notices, Section 78B of the Judiciary Act, which is the Commonwealth Act, says quite clearly that if you have an interpretation of the Constitution or a constitutional matter in federal or state courts, and local courts or magistrates' courts, of course, are state courts, then you send out these notices, and then the Attorneys General can determine if they wish to intervene, and that can mean intervening in a magistrate's court, or if they wish to send it to the High Court, or whatever. So basically, as I was saying, they can either oppose it, and that gives me a free kick in the courts to go against the COVID directions. If the magistrate isn't completely dopey, which unfortunately sometimes they are, as I experienced last time that I tried doing an authorised protest in Surfers Paradise, where the magistrate didn't allow me to make any submissions, basically, and just went through and claimed that there was a threshold issue, i.e. jurisdictional issue, and therefore it should have been thrown out, i.e. the police application to prevent my protest, but the court allowed the application, which they can't even do. But, if they're claiming that I can't do it based on COVID grounds, then I can argue in a fair court, without bias and using a fair hearing rule, I can, argue in court that, hey, look, in Queensland, for instance, the COVID directions have not been gazetted. They're required to be gazetted. You've got sections 47 and 49 in particular of the Statutory Instruments Act, and that says that if you have, I'll just summarise it, or just apply it to COVID directions, directions like COVID directions, if it hasn't been gazetted, it's not in force. So that's not even going into the constitutional arguments. You also have statutory interpretation as well, that if a law is to be interpreted, it must be interpreted in such a way that the government would not allow itself to do tortious actions unless it is specifically stated within that legislation. So the COVID directions would have to say you cannot protest or whatever, you cannot peacefully assemble. assemble, I should say. So Tina says, exactly, we need people to stand together and take back our freedom to live. I feel sorry for the businesses. Yeah, exactly, you know, there's all these mum and pop businesses, you know, multi-generational businesses, or even if someone just started a business 6 months before this COVID stuff and they're basically destroyed. And if it's 6 months before, they might not even be eligible for, you know, these JobKeeper stuff. So, yeah, and losing their homes, and, you know, unfortunately a lot of people are suiciding as well. So, Wendy, there is someone putting out that there's a protest at Dreamworld, which is at Coomera, and I suggest that that is a very poor choice of location. I think that that has... how can I put it? So, basically, there was a video that had Thanos and who else was in there? Maybe Dave Oneggs and Raphael, Craig Cole, Jackie Dundee, and some other people, and they made a video, and it was like, you know, 30 seconds of people speaking. There was a moron in Sydney, Michael Sims, who has threatened me, etc. And then he went and defamed me on my comments on YouTube, until I pointed out that I was going to be getting a restraining order against both himself. Just wait for the moped to go. That I would be getting a restraining order against himself and Anna Stancombe, who is the woman who assaulted me at the last protest. Drove her car to just in front of where we were about to march, and then got out of the car and then started filming, started saying that, oh, you're so tough, blah, blah, blah. Then she went back towards her car, stopped her camera, and then assaulted me. You know, and it doesn't matter that it didn't really hurt, her barging me with her weight, but she still assaulted me, and she has been criminally defaming me, and still continues to do so. And, you know, I believe that her and Michael Sims are attack dogs, so to speak, for a particular political party and a particular organisation that took over my protest, that I had an authorised protest in Brisbane on the 30th of May, and then they prevented me from speaking at it until the very end, when, you know, so basically it was in King George Square, where I'd already been protesting for weeks, and then going from there to Parliament House, Speaker's Corner in Brisbane, and then I got to speak in front of, you know, a few people just at the end, after I gave Tricky Tritty a dirty look for basically using me since I think it was the 11th of May in terms of trying to help them get authorised protests and all this other stuff. Then he claimed that he was going to get his speakers to claim that they were with my authorised protest, not giving a stuff about all of the participants, but then, you know, prevented me from speaking at my own protest, which is freaking ridiculous. Instead of trying to, you know, coordinate and be friendly and whatever, supposedly we've got the same goals, or a lot of overlap between my self and Reset Parliament and the IMOP party, but, you know, actions speak louder than words. But anyway, so I put as a comment in response to Michael Sims' defamatory comment, where he posted on as a comment on a YouTube video, and the topic was about Anna Stancombe, but I put, you know, hey, look, this is very paraphrased. It's weird, there's some big yellow balls or something floating in the ocean. Wonder what they are. But anyway, so I suggested that I would be doing or getting the equivalent of an AVO against them, and then he literally deleted his account apparently, because obviously it must have had a lot of incriminating evidence on there. And Anna Stancombe, with one of her multiple fake profiles, where she was claiming that I give blowjobs to men for $2 and made up this story about me robbing a restaurant and all this other stuff. And, you know, I'm sick of it. And then she had a profile called Sue Poole, and she had as a picture on that my picture, turned it into a meme and said all this filthy stuff, and, you know, accusations of criminal activities, blah blah blah. And she's done worse since then. But can you see those little yellow dots? I'll try and zoom in. So anyway, so she deleted the actual meme that was under her name of Sue Poole. And anyway, so yeah, so sorry, I did get a bit sidetracked. So my protest is on the 5th of September from 11 a.m. until 1 p.m, but, you know, might finish an hour earlier so people can get to the Brisbane ones. And it's at Surfers Paradise. So here's Surfers Paradise. You know, you got these tall buildings. There's a Q1 building. I think it's supposed to be the tallest residential building in the southern hemisphere. You can climb on that little spire, not on the actual spire, but the little triangle thing on top. I've never done it. I'm sure it costs lots of money. So it'll be, there's also a red sculpture there, but past there you have the Surfers Paradise sign, so it'll be somewhere around there. And I'll just read through some messages again. Ross says the Constitution is public law. Correct me if you feel that this is not so. Of course it's public law. So I have seen Sasha Stone's message for all Australians. So Sasha Stone has organisations like the International International Tribunal of Natural Justice and some other things. I'm going to try and see what these little floaty things are. Maybe they're balloons. And maybe I go save some dolphins by removing the balloons, if they are balloons. And then we've got stop following the media's narrative, propaganda, support this guy. Thank you very much, Tina. That's very much appreciated. So Wendy says about crazy choice. So that's probably about the Dreamworld option. So like I said, I put out, hey look, I'm doing one at Surfers Paradise, and, you know, people can come to that one as long as people aren't sick, of course, and also behave themselves and whatever. Wait for these little balloons to come in. I think they've got lights in them or something. But then someone came out with this go to Dreamworld option, which I think is completely stupid. And, you know, you can get booted out of a place for even protesting. Sure, you can try and argue in a court that, hey look, I've got the right to protest in any public space, but shit, sorry for swearing, I just got soaked trying to get these balloons. Just a second. Oh bugger, I'm gonna have to wait until it comes back. So, like I said, I think that's a stupid option. I also think that Michael Sims apparently changed the location from Hyde Park to the ANZ Stadium or Olympic Stadium, whatever you want to call it. And again, I think that's a stupid idea. He was questioned about that publicly by some, I think it was a page on Facebook or a group called something like We Are Awakening, and then there's a post within that where someone has obviously questioned him, and then he put as a reply something like, have you been speaking to the police every day like me? This is very paraphrased and reading between the lines. And then, you know, the person who questioned him apparently, you know, thought that was basically a confession that it's a big setup. And there's another video that I saw today that again is about, hey, don't do it at ANZ Stadium. That the last protest there was, what was that? It was like for like a G8 meeting or something like that, or a World Trade Forum thing. Apparently maybe 28 people got arrested. That it's designed to have, you know, one way in, one way out, that kind of thing. And anyway, so Wendy says we need to chat. I'm happy to chat. If you send me a private message in the, presumably you're watching this on Arjay Martin's For Australians page, then just send your phone number and I can call you after this. So I did try and sue. Oh yeah, so Tina must be referring to Anna Stancombe and Michael Sims. Then, you know, they're going to have some kind of repercussions. I don't put up with people doing that, but I thought you were saying about the police before, so sorry. Yeah, so Jodie's saying about legal standing. Again, legal standing, for those that haven't heard of it, basically the courts use it as a filter to get rid of cases they don't want to deal with, using judicial activism basically, and then that has been sort of made into case law. So even if a particular judge might want to hear a case, maybe they can't, because other side's arguing, hey, you don't have standing or something like that. But gee, my pants are bad now. I'll just show. So legal standing is where you are more affected by something than the general public, basically. So if you have an organisation that, you know, looks into child trafficking as an example, then you can try and maybe take, I'm sure you've all heard of Bill Heffernan's speech, where there's 28 high-profile Australians and they're alleged to have, you know, gone to Costello's boy brothel in King's Cross, including a former Prime Minister and a High Court judge. But anyway, and I'm not actually advising this, but of course, but I'm just trying to use it as an example. But if there's an organisation that has part of its specific mission statement or whatever, that they are against, you know, child trafficking and the suppression of, you know, alleged rapists or something, even though the issue would be, hey, they're only alleged, but you get the point that that organisation is more affected than the general public. Otherwise, it would have to be someone that, say, is a particular victim. So maybe a good example is with the Governor-General's letters with the Queen over Gough Whitlam's sacking. That, from memory, it was it Gough Whitlam's grandson tried getting them. They've been released now, besides being heavily redacted apparently. So that's legal standing. Just having a scroll through. So Ross says the jurisdiction of the Constitution applies to the bodies politic of our nation, state, and all states, does it not? So of course it does apply to everyone in Australia. So, you know, as I said, some magistrates think, hey, look, we don't have jurisdiction in here.
What did you get?
You know, I'm just giving the balloons away.
What did you get them?
That way. That way. Okay. Anyway, so someone's just talking to me. Anyway, so where was I up to? Yeah, so Constitution applies to everyone in Australia. That's a summary. They're so pretty. Is that the balloons? On my beautiful eyes. Yeah, so Wendy's going to see me on Saturday. So remember, surfers paradise. This is for my particular protest, and you know, if people want to come to my protest, then that's fine. If they want to go to someone else's protest, that's fine. If they want to, you know, break curfews or whatever in Victoria, then that's their own decision to make. You know, I am not inciting anything, even though we don't have incitement in Queensland as such. It's actually called counselling here. So if you encourage someone to break the law, but it's, you know, basically the same thing. But in Victoria, of course, if someone is suggesting that, you know, people break the law, if it is a law, then they can get in trouble for that. And it's an indictable offence or a serious offence that can carry, you know, big fines, big jail time if people incite people to break the law, even if the law is just a summary offence. Like, you know, if someone is encouraging someone to litter, I'm just making an example, in Victoria, or encouraging someone who is in Victoria to litter, then they could end up in jail for a long time, even though, you know, it's pretty stupid. And even though it goes against our fundamental human rights, we have the rights to, you know, protest, to lawful assembly, to, which is the same thing, but to, you know, freely associate with people, etc. And there's even federal law, which has precedent over state law when it's valid, through section 109 of the Constitution, that says you have these rights. And that would be the Human Rights Commission Act 1986. And then it says, you know, within the Act itself, hey, look, and this is very paraphrased, of course, but hey, look, all of these things in schedules 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, however many schedules, are law in force in Australia. And then it sets out things like the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. So, you know, someone might well be able to argue in Victoria, if they are caught, and this is not legal advice, it cannot be relied upon as that, but they might add to whatever their argument they have or discuss with their lawyer or whatever. Hey, what about saying that the state law is unconstitutional and inoperative because it does not comply with, you know, the ICCPR as contained within Schedule 2, or is it Schedule 2, in the Australian Human Rights Commission Act, and it might well be invalidated. So an example of a case that was similar to that was, it's not Eves, I've been reading about another case recently where police have done some bad things in Queensland, so I think that one is Eves, but I don't think the one in Sydney was Eves. But basically you had the World Catholic Day, or Catholic Youth Day in Sydney, and there were these laws made which were nicknamed the anti-annoy laws. So it basically prohibited people, in particular there was a group called the No Pope Coalition, and they were handing girls that were, you know, doing a processions or whatever, like bent, what do you call those? Can't even think at the moment. Bent coat hangers representing, hey, look, this is how you have to do abortions, blah, 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 if abortion's banned, and condoms, and had shirts like, say, no to Pope and whatever. And I'm pretty sure the lady's name is Rachel, but I don't think it's Rachel Eves, is it? But anyway, the point is that there were some people that were fined and maybe even got into more trouble than that, and they successfully challenged, I think it was in a federal court, those laws, and it turns out they were invalid laws. So they did not comply with, you know, X, Y, Z, so they weren't allowed. Anyway, so I'm going to bugger off. Just a reminder again that, you know, there is this, what I'm calling World Freedom Day, which I've been having, you know, various protests before they even started in America and Germany back in April, and other people are calling it Freedom Day, and that's fine too, you know, hashtag Freedom Day, hashtag World Freedom Day, whatever. But there's protests including in support of Victoria, and with my particular ones I also have for my political party for both state and federal, and I'll be from 11 a.m. until 12 p.m, 1 p.m, depends how many people turn up, how many people are interested, at Surfers Paradise, near the Surfers Paradise sign, and also sort of up that way. Woo! You got like a red ugly sculpture. It's supposed to be like probably a flower or something. So I'd just be somewhere along here. If I turn up by myself, then that's fine. If a million people turn up, then I'm sure the police won't be very happy, but anything's possible. But I assume it might be myself and 2 other people, who knows. So again, just reiterating, I think it's a silly idea going to Coomera, to Dreamworld, to private property. Sure, it's a semi-public space, but you still have to pay to get in, so it's arguable that it's not even a public space. And I think it's silly going to ANZ Stadium. If I was in Sydney, my preferred option is different than what the Sydney preferred option for a lot of people is, which is Hyde Park and then March on Parliament. But my version, because I have a particular thing for Speaker's Corner, then I would start it in the Domain at Speaker's Corner. But there may well be multiple protests by multiple people and multiple organisers, and it's just like maybe it can be made a public holiday, the 5th of September. That it's World Freedom Day. Sounds like it's good to me. And if there's 5,000 different protests and they all converge together because they're all going on at Parliament House or your local war memorial or local courthouse or whatever, then it is what it is. Thank you, Jody, saying thank you for your beautiful presents. I've got a little angel thing. I've got a lot of light there, and I'm getting a bald patch. It's like a halo, isn't it? Anyway, so I'll bugger off now, and I hope you're all well. Please like, share, subscribe. I am just a quick update with my previous court case, where it went through the Magistrates Court as a Peaceful Assembly Act action by a police officer in her personal capacity, which she can't even do legally. There was no mediation, which is legally required according to the Peaceful Assembly Act, before the police could even take it to court. And anyway, then the judge or the magistrate didn't bother listening to anything from me, basically. This is very paraphrased. And then I appealed that to the district court, and then the police officer's legal team, which is the Queensland Police Services legal team, even though she sued me in her personal capacity, so I was appealing against her in her personal capacity. I also had Dr. Jeanette Young, who is the Chief Medical Officer, and the State of Queensland as parties as well, including for deprivation of rights. And basically you've got the Labor Party government is making rules that is preventing opposition both to its policy as well as an opposition or opposing political force. So I should have already had my political party already registered in Queensland, and I did finally finish updating the constitution for the party in Queensland, but basically every state and territory will be nearly the same. It's just that particular electoral acts have particular wording that you have to say, hey, look, one of our goals is to run candidates for the Legislative Assembly or the lower house of Parliament in Queensland. There is no upper house at the moment, even though that's really illegal. But in New South Wales it'll be for the Legislative Assembly as well as the Legislative Council, or it might just say, you can say, a goal is to run candidates for Parliament, which covers both. So Melissa, I take it's Melissa with one L, maybe it's Melise, says they should change the Sydney location. So look, there's no one telling you have to go to ANZ Stadium. if you don't want to go to ANZ Stadium or the Olympic Stadium, Olympic Park, then just go where you want to go if you wish to go somewhere and protest on the 5th. You know, so that's interesting. And anyway, so I'm finally starting to get members tonight for my political party, but it should have already been registered, and the government has prevented me from doing that, and that is completely ridiculous. Anyway, so I'll say goodbye. Be well. I hope you're all well. I hope, you know, people aren't going completely nuts in Victoria in terms of, you know, mental health issues with being imprisoned for 23 hours a day. Apparently at a prison, I should say, was a Barwon prison. Someone was saying was Wilms Front, as in Tim Wilms with the Unshackled, said to Matt Rosengarten of the Truth and Freedom Report that the prisoners at a particular prison get 1.5 hours worth of exercise per day. So how ridiculous is that? And that, I don't know if that was for maximum security or whatever, but, you know, how terrible. Anyway, so I'm going now. Bye. Be well. Stay awesome.